Hi, I'm Erica. My sister banned me from the family gala, claiming she'd rather kiss a dog than be seen with me. She erased my work, my contributions, like I never existed. But the worst part? She never expected what happened next. I'd spent the last 3 days picking out the right dress, sleek, not flashy. Something that said, I'm still part of this. My hair, done just the way Blair always complimented back when we used to share a room and dreams. Back then, the annual gala was our vision board centerpiece. Success in heels, cocktails in hand, applause echoing off marble floors. At 38, I wasn't chasing dreams anymore. I had clients, contracts, late-night edits. But tonight, I wasn't there as a consultant. I was supposed to be a sister. Blair's big night as head of PR. The kind of title she used to write in Sharpie across our homemade magazine covers when we were kids. The text buzzed while I was blotting my lipstick. No need to come tonight. Guest list changed. That was it. No hey, sorry, no explanation. Just a 5-second detour into silence. I stared at the screen long enough for my mirror to fog up. Then I checked my email. Twice. Looked at the invite link I'd bookmarked a week ago. Still live. Still showing my name. But the words in her message felt final. Like she'd decided something about me, and didn't feel the need to explain. I called her. Of course I did. She picked up after the second ring, cool as a conference call. Hey, Blair, your text, what happened to the invite? She sighed. That long, polished sigh she used to give Mom when asked to do chores. It's just. Things changed. We tightened the guest list. It's invite only now. Real corporate. You mean? Not family? Her silence wasn't empty, it was loaded. I was the one who designed your first campaign, Blair. That was years ago, she said, almost with a chuckle. Look, don't make it a thing. It's not personal. Then the worst part, she laughed. Not loud, not cruel, worse. That little chuckle she gives when she's moved on from caring. Relax, she added. You'll live. Click. My phone screen darkened. My hands, not angry, just still. Frozen. Then another buzz. Jordan. Coworker, friend, maybe more in another life. Saw your sister at rehearsal dinner. She looked proud. You not coming? I didn't reply. The light above the kitchen sink flickered. I didn't move. Just stood there, dress half zipped, one earring in, suddenly not sure what the night meant anymore. I sat down and let the stillness wrap around me. And it took me back to Mom. Sunday evenings, hair-pinned, judging us both with the same sentence, Blair has charisma. Erica, you have diligence. But the world notices sparkle, not sweat. It always sounded fair. Until I realized it wasn't. I got scholarships. She got attention. I volunteered weekends. She flirted through interviews. And now? She's cutting me out like I'm the extra line item in a tight budget. I whispered to no one, some of us build the stage, others take the bow. That line had been in me for years. Tonight, it tasted different. Bitter. But bitterness isn't action. So I grabbed my coat. The ride downtown was quiet. The city moved like it didn't care, horns, crosswalks, couples laughing under string lights. As if tonight weren't unraveling something in me. The hotel looked like it had been dipped in gold. Warm lights poured from its glass walls. I walked past the valet line, clutch in hand, heels sure. I was not there to beg, I was there to understand. Ma'am? The doorman's voice was gentle. Name? Erica Langford. He scanned the list. Paused. Scanned again. I'm sorry, you're not on the list. Can you check again? Blair Langford, my sister. She's the head of PR. Before he could answer, I saw her. Laughing, surrounded by people in blazers too stiff and smiles too wide. I called out, Blair. She turned. Saw me. And smiled like she was surprised to see someone she unfriended in high school. When I leaned in for the cheek kiss we used to do, habit, really, she stepped back. I'd rather kiss my dog than you, Erica. The group around her erupted. Champagne glasses tilted. Someone actually said, Yikes! I froze. Everything inside me froze. But I didn't break. I straightened, looked her dead in the eye, and said quietly, You've mistaken cruelty for class, Blair. She blinked, momentarily thrown off. But I didn't wait for her to recover. I turned. The marble floor felt louder beneath my steps. At the lobby edge, a man stepped forward, clean suit, polite smile. Ms. Langford? Erica Langford? You were one of our original brand sponsors, weren't you? I nodded, too surprised to lie. He smiled wider. Pleasure to meet you in person. My lips curved, barely. Not anymore, I said, voice low. But maybe it's time I remember who I am. I walked out into the cold, clutching my purse tighter. Inside it, the turquoise button. From a dress Blair ripped when we were 12. I'd saved it for some reason. Tonight, I knew why. The drive back felt longer than it should have. Rain drummed lightly against the windshield, the kind that doesn't soak the road but lingers on the edges, soft and relentless. I didn't bother turning the radio on. My thoughts were noisy enough. That moment outside the hotel replayed over and over, each time sharper, like a paper cut I kept brushing against. Pulling into the driveway of my parents' home, I noticed the porch light flickering. That bulb had needed changing for months. Nobody seemed to mind. The house looked the same as it always did, trimmed hedges, pale brick, every curtain in place, but walking in felt different now. Like returning to a museum curated by people who'd stopped updating the exhibits. Inside, Dad sat watching TV. Some old western was playing, Gunsmoke and Horses. He didn't glance up. Mom was folding laundry, her hands working like clockwork. Neither of them said a word about the gala. That silence hit harder than any insult. I stood by the doorway, dripping faintly, waiting, for what, I'm not sure. A question. A gesture. Even just a "how was it?" But all I got was the flick of a channel and another shirt folded into a perfect square. They already knew. And their silence was its own verdict. Mom used to say, "Don't make a scene, Erica. People respect quiet." I used to think that was wisdom. Tonight, it sounded like permission to ignore injustice, wrapped in good manners. Blair breezed in just after 8, laughing into her phone. She dropped her purse on the bench like she owned the house and walked past me like I was background noise. Dinner was awkward from the first spoonful. "Blair's really making strides," Dad said, spooning mashed potatoes like he was passing a medal. "Handled herself well in a tough room." Mom chimed in, "Your sister's such a strong face for the family. I mean, she's really putting us on the map." I didn't look up. I didn't argue. I just placed my fork down and took a breath. They'd seen it. The video. I'd gotten a dozen texts on the way home. Someone, probably from Blair's team, had filmed her little performance at the gala. "I'd rather kiss my dog than you." It was now floating around on social media with the kind of energy people love, cruelty wrapped in a champagne glass. Dad cleared his throat. "You should let it go, Erica. She didn't mean it." Mom added, "Family should forgive." I looked at them both, steady. "Forgiveness isn't silence," I said. "It's clarity." I didn't shout. Didn't try. I just said it. That line hung in the air like a storm cloud no one wanted to name. Blair kept eating, eyes glued to her phone. The shine of her fork caught the light just enough to blur the line between silver and smug. Later, I sat alone in the living room, lights dimmed, the TV humming low. My mind wandered back to college, my sophomore year. I'd spent 2 months building a campaign pitch for my marketing class. Blair, still undeclared and bored, sat in on the presentation. The next week, she pitched it, my idea, at her class project. Took full credit. Got an award. When I confronted her, she said, "We're sisters. We share everything." Our parents agreed. That's what sisters do. I remember swallowing my pride so hard I could barely speak for a week. Now, I see it for what it was. Not misunderstanding. Not sibling rivalry. It was theft. Repackaged as bonding. That voice in my head, firm, calm, repeated something a mentor once told me: when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. I didn't believe it then. I do now. Later that night, I passed the hallway near Dad's study and heard whispers. Blair's voice. "Don't worry, Dad. I handled it. The last thing we need is her embarrassing us again." Again. That word sat heavy. I stood there, motionless. No need to hear more. It wasn't a slip. It was a stance. A pattern. She hadn't lashed out by accident. She'd calculated it. And they'd let her. Back in my room, I didn't cry. I sat down at the edge of the bed and stared at the dresser. On it sat the turquoise button, the one I'd sewn back onto Blair's dress when we were kids. She'd torn it playing outside. I fixed it while she napped. She never said thank you. Funny how that little thing had followed me all these years. Tonight, it looked like proof. Not of kindness, but of a history I'd romanticized for too long. I pulled out an old journal. Pages yellowed. Pen ink shaky. Tonight, they laughed. Tomorrow, they'll listen. The mirror on the wall didn't show a woman defeated. It showed someone awake. I turned out the light. Downstairs, Blair's laughter faded into the hallway. And I whispered, not for long. The sun hadn't yet broken through when I opened my eyes. There was a stillness in the air, not peaceful, but suspended. My mind reeled from the night before, and Blair's voice echoed like a poison I couldn't flush out. I'd rather kiss my dog than you. It looped, uninvited, like a bad song. I sat up slowly, legs heavy. My room was cold. I reached for the mug I always used in the mornings, the one with the faded blue rim and a chip from college. This time, the handle cracked clean off in my hand. I stared at it, dumbfounded, as if even the ceramic had decided to give up on me. Downstairs, the scent of toast and overbrewed coffee crept up before I entered the kitchen. My mother was plating scrambled eggs like nothing had happened. She didn't look up. My father sat reading a local paper, but his eyes weren't moving. They were just fixed. Morning, I said, softly. They nodded. No questions. No glances. Just silence stretched like plastic wrap across every surface. I sat down. Then Blair walked in, glowing like the slap never happened. Oh, by the way, she said, unwrapping a small box and placing it in front of our parents. I had this done for my anniversary. Inside sat a delicate sculpture, abstract curves in brushed bronze, identical to the one I had hand-shaped in the studio. I had poured weeks into it, hiding the fingerprints just right, finishing the base with a custom quote. Mom gasped. Blair, it's stunning. Dad reached for his glasses. You always understood subtle art. Such poise. I didn't speak. My hands were under the table, fists curling against my thighs. She'd taken it. Or made a copy. Either way, my creation was now her trophy. I lifted my glass. Subtlety is not theft. Blair smiled with that same infuriating calm. Oh, Erica. Don't be dramatic. The words came easy to her, like the truth was something to step around. Later, I retreated upstairs to breathe. I pulled up the Langford Family Registry, a digital archive of our business, old campaigns, archived content, credited designs. I used to have entire folders under my name. Now, it was blank. No files. No tags. I clicked the admin portal. A red message blinked back at me. Content suppressed due to copyright claims filed by Blair Langford. My vision blurred. This wasn't just rivalry anymore. It was strategic erasure. They didn't want me quiet. They wanted me gone. A memory flashed. Dad at a dinner years ago, speaking to investors. Blair has flair. Erica's more grounded. He meant it as a compliment. Back then, I thought being grounded meant dependable. Now, I saw it meant invisible. A trait praised until it served as justification for being forgotten. I grabbed the sculpture I had made, the original, and carried it to Blair's study. She was on the phone, looking over print layouts. I placed it gently on her desk. She glanced at it. You're interrupting. I made this, I said evenly. This exact one. I made it for you. You can take the spotlight, but don't erase the hands that built the light. She set her phone down slowly. People take what defines success, Erica. You never wanted it enough. She turned her back, clicking her pen like I was the distraction. But I wasn't walking out like before. I held my ground for a moment, then said, then I'll take it back. I left without slamming the door. Power didn't need noise, it needed precision. Out in my car, I opened my laptop and pulled up archived folders labeled Delaney Legacy, the campaign I built that saved Blair's job 6 years ago. I started organizing files, screenshots, date stamps. Then I messaged Silas, need everything. Emails, pitches, original drafts. Don't ask. Just send. I closed my eyes, thumb resting on the turquoise button at my collar. A silent promise. I started the engine. Blair had taken enough. She'd repackaged my presence and sold it as her identity. Not anymore. You erased me, I whispered to no one. Now I'll make you remember. By morning, the silence in my house felt heavier than the rain outside. I sat in front of my laptop, staring at the glowing screen. The cracked mug sat beside me, same place it always did. My mother's words, Blair's smirk, the stolen sculpture, all of it played in my head like a reel I couldn't shut off. I opened my inbox. Notifications everywhere. Blair's face on every post, smiling, polished, her cruelty turned into a viral clip. She'd captioned it with a joke, something about family rivalry. The comments were worse. Strangers cheering her on. No apology, no shame. They expect me to disappear, I muttered to myself. But I have stories they can't rewrite. I clicked open my calendar. The nonprofit board meeting was today. Years ago, I'd led their biggest campaign, before Blair took over the name, the spotlight, the recognition. I wasn't going for revenge, I was going to remind them I was still here. By late afternoon, the rain had stopped but the air still smelled damp. I parked outside the community center, a squat brick building with fading posters taped to the doors. Inside, volunteers rushed around, setting up lights and chairs. I carried my small bag, containing the proposal I'd spent nights perfecting, and my pre-recorded speech, a video meant to open the meeting. This was supposed to be my step forward, my quiet act of defiance. The tech crew, a few college kids, were huddled around the control booth. I smiled politely. "Hey, is everything ready for the broadcast?" They exchanged glances. One of them cleared his throat. "Actually, there's been a change. The board said your video won't air tonight." My hand froze on the edge of the table. "Why?" They, switched feeds. Said it didn't align with the event message. I blinked. "The message about community transparency?" No answer. One boy looked down. "It wasn't an accident. They told us not to run it." I turned toward the blink monitor. My image, mid-sentence, flashed for a second before cutting to a generic title slide. I felt something sharp twist in my chest. It wasn't sadness. It was fury, slow and clean. "They didn't want that story out," one of the boys whispered, almost apologetically. I nodded. "They never do." In the hallway, I found Kenneth, the board chair. He was shaking hands, smiling that politician's smile. I walked up, steady, not loud. "Kenneth, why did you cut the feed?" He looked caught off guard for half a second before recovering. "Erica, your submission was personal. We try to keep things professional, neutral." "You mean safe," I said. He gave a small shrug. "You chose to stay in this world. People respect restraint." "Restraint?" I tilted my head. "You can't silence truth by cutting wires." He leaned closer, voice lowering. "Erica, speak softly. It's better that way." "Soft doesn't mean silence," I said, meeting his eyes. He didn't answer. But behind him, I noticed two other board members watching. One looked away. The other gave me a subtle nod before turning back to the room. I walked out of the main hall and leaned against the wall, my pulse steadying. The smell of old paper and coffee filled the air. For a moment, I remembered another time, me at 16, biting my tongue as Blair lied about a broken vase. Our parents believed her, of course. "Let it go," Mom had said. "Quiet girls are stronger." Quiet girls disappear, I thought now. Marla, my mentor, once told me, "Silence isn't peace, Erica. It's absence." I didn't understand it then. But tonight, it rang clear. Every time I stayed quiet, someone else spoke louder, and rewrote the truth. No more. I climbed the narrow stairs to the projection booth. The technicians were gone. The main system still open. I connected my flash drive, found my file, and hit play. Downstairs, the big screen flickered to life. My voice filled the room. "This isn't about legacy or loss," my recording said. "It's about truth, the kind that outlives applause." Kenneth spun around. "Turn it off," he shouted. But no one moved fast enough. The sound carried, echoing against the walls. I watched from above as faces turned toward the screen. My words continued, calm and unshaken. "We built this foundation together. Every project, every family, every name mattered. No one should be erased for another's comfort." Kenneth's voice rose. "Shut it down." The technician stammered, "It's locked, we can't." I stepped into view at the top of the stairs. "This isn't about blame," I said aloud, cutting through the noise. "It's about truth." For a second, everything went still. Then someone began to clap. Then another. A low murmur spread, and the sound grew. Kenneth looked at me, red-faced, but I didn't stay to see his reaction. I turned, walking out through the side door. My hands trembled slightly, adrenaline and clarity mixing like fire and glass. In the corridor, the light caught the turquoise button hidden beneath my lapel. It glimmered faintly, a piece of my childhood that somehow refused to dull. "They erased my place," I whispered. "Now I reclaim my voice." Outside, the night air was cold, alive. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel small. I felt steady. Chapter 5, Fractures in the Family. The Langford dining room was always too polished. Too symmetrical. Even the floral centerpieces sat like they knew their place. They'd invited me to the charity luncheon like it was a courtesy. Like it'd keep me quiet. I wore navy, simple and sharp. I came on time. I shook hands. I smiled. When the MC took the mic, his voice was syrupy sweet. He listed the names with perfect pronunciation: Blair, Charles, Sylvia. Applause followed each like a trained response. But when he reached the end, he smiled and said, "And to the Langford family, for their unwavering support." That was it. No mention of me. Not a nod, not a glance. Nothing. I felt it before I saw it. The shift. Like someone dropped a fork and no one dared pick it up. The woman on my left offered a soft chuckle, then sipped her wine. The man across the table blinked, then looked away like he was embarrassed for me. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just stared at the sparkling water in front of me like it might tell me what to do. I wasn't forgotten. I was erased, publicly, intentionally. That kind of silence cuts deeper than any slur. I waited until the applause faded. Until the laughter started again. Then I folded my napkin and left. I walked 3 blocks to get air. Found a quiet cafe and sat by the window, holding a coffee I didn't drink. And that's when I heard them. 2 board members sat behind me, Langford loyalists. "She's clearly not well," one said, voice low. "All that pressure, she's unraveling." The other replied, "I passed her in the parking lot last week. She was crying in her car. Just sitting there." They laughed. Not loudly. Just enough to let the venom coat their coffee. My fingers curled tight around the cup, but I didn't turn around. I didn't make a scene. Inside, I was boiling. They weren't worried about me. They weren't curious. This was a narrative. Controlled, crafted, rehearsed. "She's unstable. She's emotional. She's not reliable." They were trying to paint me as fragile. Too fragile to lead. Too fragile to fight. That's when I knew. They didn't just want me silent. They wanted me irrelevant. Back home, I sat in my study and stared at the screen. I opened a blank document. Typed 1 line. Deleted it. Then another. Then it started to pour out: facts, dates, contributions, names. No anger. No drama. Just truth. I wasn't writing for them. I was writing to make the record correct. That afternoon, I sent a draft to one person, Silas. No commentary. Just the file. Then I thought about college. Freshman year, a professor once told me I felt too much to lead. That good leaders stay composed. I believed him for too long. I trained myself to never cry, never flinch, never fold. But I see it now. Sometimes, breaking open is what lets the light back in. The more they try to frame my emotions as weakness, the more I realize it's the only real strength I have left. I went back to the event before sunset. Most of the crowd had gone. Inside the press room, a few staff were packing up. I slid my statement, printed, folded, onto the side table by the podium. Then another on the press row. Another by the door. Each one read: "Rumors don't erase contributions. Silence doesn't equal instability. Truth stands." I didn't need to sign it. They know. A young intern glanced at one, then at me. "Is this yours?" "Yes." She nodded, then tucked it into her tote. The air was different when I stepped outside. Crisper. Cleaner. Back in my car, I didn't start the engine right away. I reached into my bag and felt for that turquoise button I'd kept all these years. A simple thing. A symbol of something that once gave me hope. I held it tight and looked at my own face in the rearview mirror. I didn't look broken. I looked awake. I opened my phone and texted Silas. They know I'm not silent. Next move. The house was quiet when I walked in. Not peaceful quiet, more like the kind that hums before a storm. I hung my coat on the chair, set my phone down, and leaned against the counter, trying to catch my breath. The meeting with Silas had drained me. His advice was sound: move carefully, don't rush. But careful was something I'd been for too long. The phone buzzed again. One new email. No name, no subject, just a file attached, Dad and me, Langford Archives. I stared at it for a full minute. Anonymous files don't bring good news, but curiosity won. I opened it. The old Langford inn filled the screen. Dusty brown furniture, sunlight bleeding through lace curtains. My father sat in his favorite chair, smiling at someone just off camera. I recognized my younger voice, light, curious, full of a faith I barely remember. "Dad, what makes you proud of this family?" I asked. He laughed softly. "You, sweetheart. You've got the fire to carry what I started." Then, from somewhere behind the lens, Blair's voice broke through. "She'll always be in your shadow, Dad. You know that." The sound hit me like a slap. My father turned his head, firm, calm. "Not if she learns to stand in her own light." I stopped breathing. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was evidence. The kind that proved what they'd been denying for years, that he believed in me, that I wasn't just the unstable daughter Blair liked to parade around at board meetings. I played it again, twice. Then I noticed something, static beneath the voices, a faint ticking like a clock underwater. Instinct told me it wasn't random. I opened the file in my editing software, adjusted the audio levels, isolated the lower track. There it was. Two familiar voices, low and hurried. Blair and Clarice. "Dad's interview files, delete the originals. Replace them with the edits by Monday," Blair said. Clarice replied, "Already handled." I swapped her name from the foundation credit sheets. "Financial documents too." Then laughter. Light, cruel, casual. I felt it in my stomach before it reached my head. They hadn't just sidelined me, they'd erased me on purpose. Every missing design, every forgotten record, it wasn't an accident. I closed the laptop and pressed both hands to the table. The wood felt cold. My mind spun. "They plotted while I stood smiling beside them," I whispered. I copied the video to an encrypted drive. Then I picked up my phone and called Marla. She answered groggily. "Erica, it's late. What's going on?" "I have proof," I said quietly. "Not rumors, not guesses. Real proof. They deleted me. I've got the recording." Silence. Then a sharp breath. "You're sure?" "I just heard it." "Erica," she said slowly, "if Blair learns you have that file, she won't just threaten you, she'll destroy you." "I know." "Then don't go public yet. Think. Once it's out there, there's no undoing it." Her words hung in the air. But I'd been thinking for years. "Silence made me their accomplice," I said. "It stops tonight." When I hung up, I sat staring at the turquoise button lying next to the laptop. My father had pinned it to my dress on my 21st birthday. "Your voice matters," he'd said, glancing at Blair across the table. "Don't let her silence you like she wants to." Back then, I'd laughed it off, thinking it was just family tension. I didn't realize he'd seen what I couldn't. That memory burned in me now, steady as a flame. By 9, I was at the small studio Silas had arranged, bare room, 2 monitors, a humming old computer. The walls smelled like coffee and stale air, but the space felt right. Neutral. Safe. I uploaded the 30-second clip, the section where Blair's voice said, "Remove her name from the credits." No edits, no captions beyond a single line, "Some truths never fade." The progress bar crawled. My pulse matched its rhythm. When it hit 100%, I sat back. For a few minutes, nothing. Then, notifications. A trickle. A rush. Comments. "Is this real? Why would they hide this?" Finally, someone's speaking. Then came the texts, some from supporters, others from numbers I didn't recognize. Reporters. Bloggers. And one message from a blocked contact, "Take it down or regret it." I didn't reply. Instead, I watched the numbers rise. Thousands of views in minutes. The clip spreading faster than I could keep up. My chest tightened, not from fear, but relief. Across town, I imagined Blair's PR team in chaos, phones ringing, damage control scripts spinning out. I pictured her pacing, furious that the story she'd buried was now breathing on its own. For the first time in years, I felt steady. Grounded. I walked outside the studio. The glass door reflected the street lights and my own face staring back, older, harder, unafraid. I pulled out my phone and typed a message to Blair. "I gave you every chance to stop. I won't stop exposing." I hit send, slipped the drive into my pocket, and looked out over the city. The night was wide open, the air cool, sharp, Alive. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. Tomorrow would bring the rest. I walked into Blair's corporate office under the guise of a meeting I had requested. She had no idea that I already knew what was coming. My heart was heavy, but my resolve was solid. The walls of the office were polished to a gleaming shine, the thick mahogany desk cluttered with papers I knew too well. She looked up when I entered, and her usual sharp smile faltered for just a second. I couldn't help but smile back, a quiet acknowledgement of what was about to unfold. Sitting across from her, I noticed something odd on the desk, a letter. An envelope addressed to me, sealed with Blair's wax stamp. I had no idea what it was, but something about it caught my attention. I reached for it slowly, eyes never leaving hers. She wasn't expecting this. As I tore the envelope open, the familiar handwriting of my father filled my vision. My pulse quickened as I read his words, his praise for my work, but also his warning. Don't let them silence your voice, Delaney. You are the heart of this legacy. His words, buried under years of manipulation, now came crashing back. My throat tightened, and I closed my eyes for a moment, letting the weight of his message sink in. The confirmation I'd longed for, but also the sorrow of knowing how much had been erased. You are the heart, Delaney, I muttered to myself. Don't let them pretend otherwise. I glanced up at Blair, who was watching me with a carefully neutral expression. But I could tell she knew that something had shifted. This was no longer just about designs, no longer just about the brand. It was personal now. I wasn't prepared for what I found next. The letter, now discarded to the side, revealed a folder, its contents hidden beneath its layers. As I flipped through, I saw it, drafts of my original design mock-ups, designs I had poured my soul into, the same designs that Blair had rebranded as her own. My stomach twisted in disbelief as I stared at the mock-ups, now stripped of my name, rebranded under the legacy label. Blair had stolen everything. The designs I had created, the plans I had mapped out, they were all part of her empire now. I recorded her in the room, careful not to let her notice. As I picked up a few of the pages, I asked, "Do you know whose hands built all this?" Her eyes flickered with irritation before she tried to dismiss it. "You're reading old files, Delaney. Things evolve." "Evolution isn't theft disguised," I shot back, my voice louder this time. The air grew thick. She was cornered, and she knew it. Colleagues started to walk by, pausing at the door, sensing the shift in the room. I pressed on, refusing to let it go. "Do you really think you can just erase me from this? From everything I've built?" Blair's jaw tightened. Just then, the office door creaked open, and I saw the security guard standing at the threshold. Blair wasted no time. "Escort her out," she barked. I stood my ground, the anger rising in my chest. "I built every line you steal." The guard hesitated, looking between the two of us. Blair shot him a look that could kill. Before anything could escalate, I pressed a button on my remote, and the screen behind me lit up with the design proofs, each one clearly marked with my watermark. The drafts, the plans, the proof that I had done this first. The room fell into stunned silence. Board members who had been quiet up until now gasped. Some even stood, their eyes wide with shock. Blair's carefully crafted facade started to crack. I could feel the years of manipulation in the air, thick with lies. The memory of my 25th birthday flooded back. My father, the one person who had always believed in me, had given me a gift, a portfolio of my work, a promise wrapped in ink. "You will speak through your work long after my voice fades," he had said, handing it to me that night. That was the seed of it all, the beginning of everything I had ever done. Now, here I was, ready to expose the truth, to take back what had been taken from me. Blair was struggling, trying to gaslight the room. "These designs evolved from family strategy," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "They are part of our legacy." I stepped forward, feeling the power shift. "These started from my sketches. You hijacked them." The words hit the air like a thunderclap. The tension in the room was unbearable, but I wasn't backing down. I had the proof now. I wasn't the invisible shadow any longer. The truth was here, undeniable and raw. Blair's face flushed with rage. "You're breaking family trust," she spat. "Family built on lies isn't trust at all," I retorted. The cameras flooded the room, capturing every moment, every word. Blair was cornered, and she knew it. I left Blair's office with the weight of the world on my shoulders, but for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel erased. I felt bigger than I ever had before. The turquoise button in my pocket seemed heavier now. My father's voice echoed in my mind, "You're the heart." I whispered to myself as I walked out of the building, "The stage is mine now." Blair stood in the doorway, watching me walk away, stunned and broken. I didn't look back. The night stretched out before me, and for the first time, it felt like I could breathe again. The night was alive with the sounds of soft chatter and laughter, but I barely noticed as Silas and I walked through the grand entrance of the gala venue. The lights overhead glittered like stars in a dark sky, the polished floors reflecting every step we took. The crowd, elegant and well-dressed, glanced our way as we entered, the energy shifting in the air. The whispers started immediately, some full of surprise, others of curiosity. No one expected me to walk in here. But I wasn't here for their approval. Blair was waiting at the top of the staircase, her smile carefully in place, the mask of a perfect host. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she saw me approach, but she kept the facade intact. "Delaney," she said, her tone sweet but laced with a warning. "I didn't expect to see you here." I didn't smile back. "I'm here to claim my place," I said softly, just loud enough for her to hear, before turning toward the ballroom. The doors swung open, and the noise of the crowd faded for a moment, the cameras flashing like an endless storm. The audience settled into their seats, a hum of anticipation filling the air. In my mind, I wasn't just entering a room full of people. I was stepping onto a stage, and tonight, I wasn't asking permission. I was claiming my presence. Before the program began, Silas gave me a reassuring glance. I knew he was ready for this. But I wasn't prepared for the unexpected move he made. As the event coordinators were setting up, Silas walked up to the stage. The room fell silent as his voice rang out across the speakers. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his tone steady but carrying authority. "I have something important to share." The audience turned their attention to him, their curiosity piqued. Silas took a deep breath. I found the email logs from the archives. The altered registry. The original project files. And what I found confirms a truth that's been hidden for far too long. He paused, allowing the tension to build. Blair Langford and Clarice Langford orchestrated the erasure of Delaney's name from the legacy of this family. The room erupted into whispers, disbelief filling the air. I felt a wave of shock hit me, but alongside it, there was relief. It wasn't just me anymore. Someone from the outside had confirmed it. The weight of the years of silence, of being erased, suddenly felt a little lighter. Blair's face hardened, her eyes flashing with anger, but she said nothing. But the moment of victory was short-lived. Blair stood up sharply, her heels clicking against the marble floor as she strode to the front of the room. "This is absurd," she snapped. "I won't stand here and let you slander me in front of everyone." Her eyes locked onto mine, her voice dripping with contempt. "You're just trying to create drama for attention, Delaney." I didn't flinch. Instead, I raised the letter from my father, holding it out for all to see. His handwriting, the words he had left behind for me. I read aloud the part that struck me the most. "You are the heart of this legacy. Don't let them pretend otherwise." I watched as Blair's face drained of color, her perfect mask cracking for the first time. But she refused to back down. She turned toward the media cameras, trying to regain control of the room. But she couldn't. The truth was out, and there was no turning back now. I felt a chill as the memory of my father's words returned, sharp and clear in my mind. I was standing in the middle of a moment that had been years in the making. The night of my 25th birthday, when my father had taken me aside, just before I left for the city. He had looked at me, his eyes soft with understanding, and whispered, "The light you carry deserves a stage, not shadows. Never let anyone silence you." His words had been a promise, and tonight, I was keeping it. The shadow I had lived in for so long was gone. I wasn't just taking my place at this gala, I was reclaiming everything I had lost. Blair's voice shook as she tried to salvage what little dignity she had left. "These designs evolved from our family's strategy. Delaney doesn't understand the bigger picture." I didn't flinch at her attempts to gaslight the room. "These started from my sketches," I said loudly, stepping forward. "You hijacked them. Every single one of them. The room was silent for a moment, then gasps filled the air. Some stood, others turned to each other in disbelief. Blair's control was slipping, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Why was Delaney erased? A board member finally asked, his voice incredulous. The crowd waited, anticipating her response. But she had nothing left to say. The applause started slowly at first, then grew louder, faster. People stood, some even crying, recognizing the truth that had been hidden from them for so long. The gallery wasn't cheering for Blair. They were cheering for me. For the truth I had fought to expose. Blair's face collapsed, her pride shattered in front of everyone. She had lost. She couldn't manipulate the truth any longer. For a moment, I was stunned. The weight I had carried for so long, of being overlooked, erased, silenced, had been lifted. This was the vindication I had waited for. I had done it. I stepped down from the stage, my heart still pounding from the overwhelming emotion of the moment. Silas was at my side, his expression proud, his eyes meeting mine in a quiet moment of triumph. The turquoise button in my lapel felt heavier now, as though it carried the weight of every promise, every fight, and every loss I had endured. I walked through the crowd, the applause radiating around me. It wasn't for Blair. It was for the truth I had reclaimed. As I walked out into the night, a reporter approached me. "What's next for Delaney Cottrell?" they asked quietly, their voice full of curiosity. I looked at the city lights ahead, feeling the weight of the moment settle within me. "Whatever I choose," I said softly. I woke up early, the soft morning light spilling through the windows of my new apartment. The city outside was still, the silence a gentle comfort after the storm of the last few weeks. I sipped my coffee by the window, letting the warmth of the mug seep into my hands. The media buzz from the gala was still everywhere, headlines, blogs, people reaching out, telling me they were proud, that my voice had made a difference. But the silence in here wasn't empty. It was peaceful. My space. Sometimes, the loudest victory is the life you build afterward, I reflected, the words echoing softly in my mind. This moment, this calm, felt more like a triumph than any applause could ever be. I took a deep breath and settled into my new routine. There was still so much to think about, to process. I grabbed my journal and began writing. It felt right to reflect, to understand what had brought me here. I started with a quote I had seen often on my calendar. Maya Angelou's words, "When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time." I paused, the pen hovering above the paper as I thought back. What had kept me silent for so long? Fear, certainly. Loyalty, maybe. Guilt, definitely. But also what helped me break free: courage, truth, and time. The time to let the pieces fall into place, to see the truth clearly. Healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means choosing peace. The phone buzzed, pulling me out of my thoughts. I glanced at the screen and saw her name, Blair. After days of silence, she was calling. I almost didn't answer, but the part of me that still needed closure told me to pick up. Her voice was stiff, civil, but there was a thin layer of tension beneath it. "I've been thinking, Delaney," she said, "about everything that's happened." She wasn't apologizing, not in the least. But she was acknowledging the chaos. She blamed the pressure of legacy, the weight of expectations, and the rivalry between us, never herself. I listened. I didn't argue. It didn't matter anymore. I didn't need her confession. When the call ended, I didn't feel anything. No anger. No relief. Just nothing. And that, strangely enough, felt like peace. I closed my eyes and thought back to the last conversation I'd had with my father, just 2 weeks before he passed. He'd called me, regret in his voice. "Don't let their noise mute your melody, Erica," he had said, his words quiet but firm. That line had stayed with me. Whenever doubt crept in, whenever I questioned my own worth, I remembered him. His love wasn't loud, but it was steady, real. And now, it anchored me. It reminded me of who I truly was. With the foundation I'd built, I was ready for the next step. I drafted the email, the one I had been planning for days. It was time to announce the Her Voice Foundation, my initiative to mentor young women in family-owned businesses, helping them navigate toxic power dynamics. Silas had already volunteered to help with the legal structure, and Aunt Naomi had pledged seed funding. This was it. I hit send, the words official, My name finally in its rightful place. Delaney Cottrell, founder and CEO. This wasn't just a new chapter for me. This was my story, on my terms. And it was just the beginning. Things were changing, but not all of them. I hadn't heard from Mom, and Clarice had moved out west, as expected. Some things just couldn't be fixed. But there was Jenna. She'd stopped by last night. "You cracked something open in this family," she'd said quietly, her voice full of awe. "I don't know what's next, but you made us see the truth." I hadn't known how to answer her then, but I knew now. Some ties had been severed beyond repair. But some? Maybe they could rebuild, honestly, from the ground up. I accepted that not everything broken could be fixed, but I was okay with that. Because I had chosen truth. And in the end, it was enough. I stood by the window, the light catching the turquoise buttons still pinned to my jacket. It had been with me through all of this. And tonight, as I sat in my new office, feeling the weight of everything that had happened, I finally understood. Closure isn't clean. It's messy. It's choosing to live openly, with an open heart, no matter the scars we carry.